Hello and welcome to Core Values, the All Things Broken Arrow Schools podcast, part of the ArrowVision podcast network. I'm your host, Greg Spencer, alongside Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Chuck Perry. How you doing today, Chuck?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here as well. It's been a while since we've been able to get together and do this, and we've got two very special guests from the Vanguard Innovation Academy of Broken Arrow Public Schools. We've got Mr. Darrow and Reese Hundley. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Very, very well. Thank you.
So Vanguard, for those listening and watching that don't know, is in its second year as a school here at Broken Arrow Public Schools. Talk a little bit about, and we'll let Andrew go first here. Talk a little about what is Vanguard Academy and what makes it different.
So Vanguard Academy is an offshoot of Broken Arrow High School. So we have an opportunity for students who are in 8th grade to apply to our academy, and they attend there for 9th through 12th grade. And what makes it different is we have two unique programs that our students can apply for and be accepted to. The first is the Expo program, which accepts 50 students every year, and it is a project-based learning program. So the idea is that the students learn their core educational standards through projects and applications and being able to do activities along with hands-on approach to that learning. The other program, which is the program that I'm a part of, is the Broken Arrow Design Lab program, sometimes BAD Lab for short. And our program is about human-centered, human-focused. So we're all about real-world applications of the core standards that we would teach to Broken Arrow High School students. So our main focus is our students should never have to ask the question, when am I going to use this in life? Because we should be addressing that pretty much every day.
Yeah, for sure.
It's good stuff. You talked about students applying for that in the 8th grade. Talk about the process and the things that you're looking for that you feel, what type of student would be successful in that program, because it's unique.
Sure. So the application process usually opens up in January, and our students fill out an online application, Google form. Our principal, Ms. Replogle, will be going around to the middle schools and kind of giving an introduction of what our programs are like and about what kind of student we'd be looking for. A successful Vanguard student is self-motivated, self-driven. There's somebody who's interested in a different approach to learning, somebody who doesn't necessarily do well just sitting in a classroom, listening to a lecture, reading out of a book, those type of things, but needs some unique way of approaching the content. We also look for students who are very passionate about learning and about being in charge and control of their own learning. Our programs are very student-led and student-driven, so we want to make sure that our students will be engaged in their own education process. So we have a rubric we evaluate the students on. We do interviews. We usually have them participate in some kind of engineering design activity because both of our two programs do have an engineering component that goes along with them as well. So.
Reese, I know for a fact that you teach a couple of unique classes. I've had the privilege of doing a video over your Outward Bound class. Talk a little bit about your specific classes that you're teaching, and then from a teacher's perspective, what makes Vanguard different?
Yeah, so we teach a few classes that are a little bit different than what you would find in a typical school. I co-teach a class with Mr. Summers, and it's an outdoor education class. And so it is actually a environmental science class where they get credit for that class, and we teach environmental science, but it's through experiences. And so we go outside a lot, and we may go out on our 80-acre property around Vanguard and go out and identify plants and collect data and do nature journaling and involve a lot of creativity and skills, even practicing reflection when we go out. We go on the BMX bikes, we shoot archery, we go to the climbing gym 5 times. Every kid gets to go to the climbing gym. We just started that.
And that class is open as an elective to Broken Arrow High School students as well, right?
That's right. Yeah. So all of our freshmen go through the outdoor education class as full-time Vanguard students, but we also do offer an elective class for high school students to come and participate. And so we'll go to the climbing gym. We'll actually certify them to belay. So we introduce them to the climbing, and if they want to come out and do that with their families and get involved in that community, it's kind of an entry point for that. And then we take them fishing. We tie flies, do fly fishing. And I think that we're exploring more and more the camping opportunities. I just started developing kind of like a program where we can even check out like equipment to the students, and they can go out and practice those skills with their families. We even right now are building fires with the kids. We had some kids build their first fire today outdoors.
Do we have anybody on hand to make sure it stays?
Absolutely. So we teach them how to practice leave no trace principles, and even risk management. So in teaching them about how do we manage risk, and when are the times appropriate for failure, and giving them the room to do that. And then what are some times, and they'll help us even assess a situation and decide, okay, this is a potential high consequence, high probability of failure. We never want to operate in that zone. So like, what are some things that we can do to mitigate that risk and make sure that we're operating in an environment where we can be successful and mitigate that any sort of danger or safety. So they're developing some real world skills and
those are not only real world skills, but they're life lessons that are applicable in a lot of other areas that they can take with them.
Absolutely. And so that's one thing that I think is really cool about Vanguard. So maybe when we go into something, maybe a student is like, oh, I'm not good at math, I don't like math. And we're like, okay, well, let's approach it from this angle. And then so through that project-based learning or human-centered design, inevitably they're going to learn and apply that knowledge and apply those standards going through that process, but it's natural. And they're learning those things that we want them to walk away with once they graduate, but it's natural and it's real.
I think when you think about schools and how the joke I've heard before is if Rip Van Winkle woke up in America, the only thing that looked the same is
Public schools,
because it's so silo-based, hour by hour subject matter that a lot of students have a hard time seeing how it all ties together and how it all applies maybe to real life. And I think that's what's so cool about the experience they're getting at Vanguard is there's such a crossover. Even though you're teaching science, it sounds like there's so many things integrated in it that, cross-curricular projects and things that you're doing every day that it's just unique. And that's probably how schools should be done because that's how life and jobs really are.
I agree. Yeah. And I talk with our other staff. That's one really cool thing about Vanguard is it feels really close, and that can be good and bad sometimes for the kids, but everybody knows everyone.
Which is natural with a school of the size it is anyway.
That's right. And I think those relationships are really strong between instructors and between students. And of course we have our good days and bad days, and we learn to deal with that. But there's really no hiding. And we also know what other people are working on. So over here, they may be in practicing English or whatever, but they saw them out there the other day and they're like, oh yeah, I can tie this in here or I can tie it in there. And so they're seeing that there are connections with everything. Everything's related. And that's how reality is. And we need people that can make those connections.
So if a student has been the type that has all A's, 4.0, turns every assignment in, are they necessarily going to be successful at Vanguard? I mean, if they're very regimented in what they've done.
So one thing that we've talked about before is students that know how to play the game of school, right? So the game of school is I come into my classroom, I sit down at my desk, and my teacher gives me a piece of paper. I write all the correct answers on it. I give it back to my teacher. That gets me an A in my class. And one thing we kind of emphasize with our students, because we use a holistic approach to both our grading system and to our evaluation system of our students, and to making sure that they're growing as a whole person. So in that kind of playing the game of school, that's kind of like a C for us. That's what we call proficient on our scale of from developing to mastery. And so we really expect our students to go above and beyond that. So it's actually kind of interesting because students who do have that track record, that 4.0, that perfect A's, and especially the ones that have been in advanced programs, because we don't offer any kind of advanced placement programs on our campus. Everything is on-level classes. they kind of get taken aback when they get their first grades back and they're like, well, I did what you asked me to do on the assignment, but I still kind of got some of these things were lower because I still have room to grow. And that's really what we're looking for the most, is if they're growing as a whole person and if they have room to improve in those other areas. And so that being said, we use an alternative transcript. We have our traditional Broken Arrow Public Schools transcript, but we also have our what's called a mastery transcript, which lets us grade and evaluate and emphasize on those students, not just they understood the math content, but they also collaborated with their peers. They were able to communicate clearly with adults along the process. They were able to problem solve and think critically outside of the box to come up with unique solutions to those problems. And so a lot of the time when we hear about careers and what they're interested in from students is that they're looking for those soft skills, right? Can they make a phone call? Can they do a professional email? And so we incorporate that into everything that we do, even in our core classes, so that the students are growing in that fashion. They're growing outward and not just in that knowledge category. So
I love it because, being older now in life, I see so many former students, people I know that they might not have been stellar academically, grade-wise through school, but they've gone out and done some incredible things in life, been very successful in their careers. And I think what you're saying is it's got to transfer to really, show that what success looks like. And just turning in assignments and no zeros doesn't mean you're going to be successful in life later on. So I appreciate that. I would like to hear a few more things about what you have at Vanguard. You all may not be experts in all the realms, but you have drones and our ag barns. And can you talk a little bit about?
So in addition to our two core programs that we offer that students have to apply for that are full-time programs, we do offer several elective options where students can come over for a single elective hour from the high school and be able to engage in some different cool stuff going on our campus. So we do have a drones program that is an elective for BA high school students. So they do everything from basic, just going outside and flying the drone around the building, to video recording with it, to collecting data from around our campus with them, to doing programming and autonomous drone flight as well. We have a relationship with a NASA associate that would like for us to be able to prove that you can fly drones around a city so that they don't collide with each other. Because as we know, a lot of delivery companies are moving towards drones for potential delivery packages. And so that's something that, the Federal Area Association is very invested in. We do also have a wide variety of agriculture programs because the ag classes were moved out there. So we have the full ag shop and the ag barns that are there as well. So those are classes for both freshman academy students and for high school students, everything from introduction to agriculture to vet sciences to manufacturing to working with the metalworking and woodworking in the shop and all of that stuff as well. So we have two highly qualified ag teachers that are doing those programs, as well as, your normal taking care of goats and pigs that we have on campus, chickens we have on campus too, out in the barns.
And the horticulture, the greenhouse, and also talk about the skills you'll learn with all the equipment that every freshman, when they go through, as far as learning how to weld, every freshman.
Yeah, so for those students that come on our campus full-time, there's the 75 freshmen, the 50 in the Expo program, 25 for the Broken Arrow Design Lab. And we have a class that we call Introduction to Vanguard, and it's split between the two programs. So for Introduction to Vanguard, the idea is that our students are learning how to safely use every piece of equipment that we could possibly have on campus for any kind of manufacturing. And we really emphasize that with the freshmen so that as they grow on our campus, they have the opportunity to continue to utilize those pieces of equipment for their projects in their core classes as well. So a really good example of this is last year we were having students create a mandala for geometry. It's a circular object with several inscribed pieces. One of our students who was very good at welding went and got the oxyacetylene torch and cut his mandala out of a piece of metal and then welded all of the things that represented him and his background and his culture onto that piece. So it's something that's really cool that we have access to these extra tools. So the 3D printers, laser engravers, sewing machines. We've got all kinds of tools for working with cardboard and working with styrofoam. And we're constantly looking for donations of both tools and materials because our kids are always making something new. So I know like one of the big culminating projects for our expo program last year, they built their own model cities. So that wouldn't be possible without our introduction to Vanguard course, for them to be able to know how to use the jigsaw to cut out the wood, for them to know how to use the soldering irons to wire up all the electricity, for them to be able to do all of the 3D modeling and 3D printing that they did with our 3D printers. So it's a really cool class. It's a lot of work to try and make sure that you know how to use everything safely so that they can use everything safely. But what's really neat about the way that our growth system works is, for me as the instructor for that class, is an introduction on how to use the sewing machine. So I know how to thread the needle. I know how to stitch a stitch. I know how to make like a little zipper pouch. And then the kids that really love sewing machines, and they really love that idea and that practice, and once they start doing it, they really want to invest in it more. They can continue to follow and pursue that. They can individually learn more about it and then apply that in their classes on a daily basis. And so I have kids that, after the first week of sewing, they were like, how much is a sewing machine again? I'm going to go look and see if I can get one for myself.
And we'll also check those out too to students. I know last year around the time of prom, I remember checking out quite a few sewing machines because students were making their own dresses or modifying it. And on the flip side of the spectrum of high tech stuff in the makerspace, I also teach a primitive skills class outdoors, and basically the makerspace becomes the woods. And we go out and we work with all sorts of stuff. We work with all sorts of evaluate the plants and look at their properties, and we build friction fire with sticks and rub sticks together and are successful at it. And so learning those, indigenous skills that kind of unify all of us.
A lot of us forgot about or don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm
And
going to say I didn't know.
yeah,
I should probably take that class myself.
it's so much fun. And what's really cool too, going back to that comment about, students that have done really well in school in the past. Like I've seen students that really have never done well in school, that are typically going to be involved with something whenever things go wrong. And I've seen them just flourish, when we take them outdoors, and they're finding a love for learning, making their own tools. Like we make our own tools, we go out, and, I really introduce as many different skills and projects as I can, but they can continuously work toward mastery on those projects, and they can submit pictures as evidence on their own time. And so really, once they've been introduced to those skills, and making outdoors and working, as a group and learning about different cultures and how people have done things around the world, and it brings them together, but they also have that opportunity, if they really are passionate about it, that they can pursue it as far as they want, and develop those skills. We're fixing to get into flint knapping and working with stone tools and making bows and arrows with the sticks and stuff that we find out in the woods, and we run it like a NASP archery, so it's very safe. But they get to take the tools, and it's almost like they win twice whenever they take the materials that they've created, and they're successful with them on going out and throwing atlatls or shooting archery or building fire with the own tools that they created.
Yep.
I think that hits on another pretty common misconception about what Vanguard is that they're a smart kid school. And that's not necessarily true. Like we have every kind of student, from the student that was getting straight C's and D's or F's even, and all the way up to the ones that were 4.0 and in all of their advanced classes. And what's interesting is you bringing them all together in such a small, unique environment, and then seeing how they all flourish in different areas in different ways. And some of them, I think back to when I was teaching middle school, I had a student in my math class who never turned in a piece of paper, right? He knew how to do the math and he could show me how to do the math, but he wasn't going to turn in an assignment. And so he ended up with, a C or a D, because it's that playing that game of school. But this is also the same kid that came to me and was like, Mr. Darrow, do you have like a hose for a vacuum cleaner? Because I found one on the side of the road and I put everything else together, but I'm still just missing this one component. And so I'm just thinking, like, if that kid had had the option to come to Vanguard, right? Like, that's the type of passion that we're looking for, is like somebody who's willing to go up and above and beyond. So like when we talk about our parent meetings, everybody wants to know about homework and tests and, you know, all that typical school stuff. And it's like, well, no, we don't really do homework, and no, we don't really do tests, because we're evaluating our students in different ways. And really our curriculum and our content is so engaging and exciting that a lot of our students want to do it outside of our class time, and they want to be invested in working on their projects and the things that they're, you know, completing. Especially when it comes to more of our engineering design stuff that we do on our campus as well.
I really appreciate what you're saying about the students, and I think schools are guilty of this, because those of us that enter the education profession, we usually had a pretty positive experience in school, and that kind of makes us want to be a teacher or get in, you know, tied into education in some way. But what made us successful in school was playing the game of school. And I think we've got to look outside that again, tapping into what we consider as smart or intelligent may not be what the world needs and the workforce. And we've got to be creative and think of new ideas on how to reach all types of students and educate all types of students. Tell me a little bit about, you have taught in a regular school setting. Why did both of you choose a setting like Vanguard to teach in? Because it's probably stretched you in a lot of ways and caused you to get into some areas that you're not comfortable in, but it must be fulfilling somewhere along the way.
It's interesting. We have two very different origins in how we got involved at Vanguard. So I don't have any real engineering background, education, or anything along those lines. I started out as a middle school math teacher. I taught 7th and 8th grade pre-algebra and algebra 1. And then we had a Gateway to Technology program at Childers Middle School, and our coach or teacher that was responsible for that retired. And so I kind of moved over into his position. And that's kind of the extent of my engineering training, is the professional development that I did leading into that class. So I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th graders aerospace and some mechanical design, and doing some app design and computer software and stuff like that. So transitioning over to Vanguard for me was a big leap. It was very interesting. I learned a lot about human-centered design on my own, spending a lot of my own time researching and diving into TED Talks. IDEO is a big organization that the founder of design thinking and kind of leads the direction of design thinking. And then just getting in there and doing it with the students, and being a student yourself, right? That's something that we always talk about, like not being embarrassed to say, well, I don't know the answer to that, but let's find out together. And so that's kind of one of my mottos this year with my students is I may not know, but I know how to find out. And so that's really how we push forward in our program. And, you know, the first couple of months, students were really hesitant, brand new thing, completely out of the box, totally different. But now that they see it and they feel it and they're excited about it, they're bought into it, they have that energy that makes it so much easier for the new students on our campus. Our freshmen this year, we have not had any difficulty getting them to buy in 100% because they see it from the sophomores and the juniors, and they know what it's going to be like. So on the teaching perspective, like I have to do a lot more planning, a lot more prep. I mean, I'm doing curriculum, brand new curriculum. We have that very small school feel. I am the math teacher for our program, right? So I teach Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Statistics from freshmen all the way up to juniors. So there's a lot that goes into that. But, you know, it is very fulfilling because they are excited about coming to school every day. Students that they've told me when I was at Freshman Academy, I was a huge abstinence issue. You know, I came to school once a week at most or something like that. Students that we know would have been dropout risks, very high dropout risks, that we know now are going to graduate because we're making sure that they're in this every single day. So
yeah, I wanted to interject there. I think that's a great outlook to have because I think, you know, not even just for teachers at Vanguard, but teachers everywhere, because we talk about, you know, breaking the traditional model. And, you know, I always try and, you know, talk to my staff and my teachers and everybody in terms of, you know, in the kids as well, is we're all lifelong learners, right? We're all pushing ourselves to continue to grow. So if kids see right through it when a teacher doesn't know something, so why hide it? I think if you let them know that, hey, I'm growing right along with you, this is all part of a learning experience, I think everybody needs to have that outlook. We talked, Chuck talked about at the beginning about how education needs to continue to evolve. And I think that if everybody takes that same outlook, we'd all be better teachers.
Right now, get $200 from TTCU Federal Credit Union when you open a new checking account with direct deposit. What would you buy with $200?
Cars, race cars, my own apartment, 100 coloring books, and a puppy.
Or maybe some groceries and a tank of gas. $200 for whatever works for you from TTCU, because life is better in balance.
Recently, you've had to put your life on hold, and we're with you in this. At Ascension St. John, we're now open for appointments, and we are fully prepared for your safety in our care. As we open our doors again, our doctors, nurses, and care teams will continue to wear personal protective equipment. We've taken even more steps to clean and stringently disinfect all areas. We will maintain distancing in our waiting rooms, and will continue to limit visitors. And we will still screen all staff to protect their health and yours. Our emergency rooms are here 24/7. Please do not delay care. We're still delivering babies and performing surgeries. And we're open for your appointments, from specialists and surgical care to routine care and health screenings. Ask us about virtual visits. Ascension St. John continues to care for you, as we have been for almost a century. Thank you for trusting us.
For families who like to build their wealth while staying liquid, we have flexible rate CDs to keep your funds working hard, even when you're not. First National Bank of Broken Arrow. The right balance.
My background is actually quite a bit different. I grew up and I was surrounded by teachers. My parents were biology high school teachers. My grandparents were teachers and professors. My wife is a teacher. I actually grew up, and I remember my dad retired, very frustrated working in the public education system, and I had told myself I'd never be a teacher. My neighbor was an engineer, and right out of high school, I started working with him. I went to Oklahoma State, went through the engineering school, ended up getting a bachelor's degree in biosystems engineering, and worked in the oil field as a SEMA engineer. And as we started a family, I was always on the drilling rigs, and it was really intense. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll try something else. And so my wife grew up and graduated from Broken Arrow. She's also a Teacher of the Year.
Teacher of the Year at Aspen Creek Elementary, or ECC, right?
Yep, at Amanda Hundley. Really proud of her. And so she went to Camp Lockridge as a kid at a camp, and they had an opening. They're starting an outdoor classroom program. And in college, I did a lot of like guiding and doing outdoor adventure stuff and working on ropes courses, and I just loved it. It was my therapy going through engineering school. And I had that need to get back into that. And so I had that opportunity to help start that program and build it from the ground up. And it's now operating still over at Woodward Park with Brian Bovard. And that's how I got plugged in with the Tulsa community and working with all sorts of districts in this area, developing outdoor classroom programs with teachers, primarily fifth grade. And I got bit by that bug of teaching and fell in love with it, and developing interactive experiences that were tied directly with what's going on in the classroom, but making it real. And that's when I fell in love with education. And I got an opportunity to actually start my own business as a consultant, and worked in aquaponics and traveled all over, worked with people all over the world, working with a lot of Native American tribes, and became like an educational specialist, developing curriculum and working with universities. I went through engineering school at OSU and did the senior design program. And while I was a consultant, I also worked with TU engineering students in the mechanical engineering department, and got to know that department and working with them. I was a client for their seniors doing senior design projects, and we did 3 different projects with them. And I learned a lot about their engineering program, and of course I experienced it firsthand at OSU, and that really helped me kind of see that there's so much power in this human-centered design process. I actually didn't know about human-centered design until I started working out in the industry as an engineer and developing all sorts of programs and doing innovation and product development and sales, and really applying all of those things that we're teaching in our Bad Lab program. And it was very natural. But I found out about Vanguard and this new kind of education. And Emily Lim, actually, I was just catching up with her a couple of springs back, and she was telling me about opening up this school, and they needed a spot for their makerspace, and they were looking for somebody that was kind of unique. And I was like, wow, this is like what I would envision education should always be. And so it's like, I want to get in on this. I love innovation and I love education, and I was looking for something kind of new. And so that's where I ended up, and it's been a grand adventure and a great experience and experiment. And I love it. I don't want to ever leave. It's an incredible place to work, and our staff are incredible. I'm surrounded by people that inspire me, and like Andrew was saying, like, we don't know the answer, we can find somebody that does, but we really are practicing what we preach and applying those principles and mechanics of that human-centered design process, and inevitably they're going to develop something that is of value, and it's a product that they can build a business around, or they can innovate something completely new, or take on a challenge that has never been solved. And so it's a lot of fun to dive into stuff when I don't know the answer, but we're learning right along with them. We're bleeding around them right along with them too. We fail and we get hurt, not much, but get a cut or a scrape every once in a while and pick each other up and learn from it. And it's a lot of fun. I don't see myself being anywhere else.
I'm just blown away by the passion both of you show for teaching and for our students. And when you drive by the school, a lot of people haven't seen it yet. It's if you go east of 193rd County line, the Casey's is there on the corner, catty corner from our football stadium. If you keep heading east on 61st, about a quarter mile down on your left, you'll see the building, and it's aesthetically just almost shocking. It's such a unique building. The architecture will really catch your eye, but I think our listeners today will see it's not just what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside that you all are doing, and you've just inspired me today listening to you.
And one of the things we want to touch on before we wrap things up is community involvement. What are some ways that our community can get involved? I know in your class especially, you guys are always looking for help. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so on top of the other classes that I've already mentioned that I teach, I also teach and co-teach with Reese a human-centered design class called Design Rotation. So Design Rotation is about taking real people's problems and finding real solutions to those problems. So for example, our unit right now is called Pay It Forward. Our students are working directly with Broken Arrow Public Schools employees to find solutions that apply to them that are problems that they want solutions to. So things that they're investigating is, how might we get students more engaged in the classroom? How might we help students with mental health issues feel more comfortable? We have a student whose sibling is hard of hearing, so he's looking into how might we figure out ways to make our hard of hearing students feel more comfortable and welcome on our campuses and things along those lines. So one of the ways that we do that, we have a form that you can submit on our website, which is kind of tricky to get to, but you can always, contact me through the BA Schools website, and I'd be happy to share it with you. But that form is for any community members, anyone involved at all, for them to submit that with problems for us to help them solve and help to identify those different issues, because our students not only are solving problems in our classes every day and trying to find unique and creative solutions to those problems, but they'll also be doing senior design capstones. So our students hypothetically have all of their graduation credits basically done by the time they're a junior, just by the way that our curriculum paces and the way that we have everything laid out. And their senior year is actually dedicated to one senior design capstone project. And we really emphasize that those projects are something that's passion for them, something that they really care deeply about. And that can be something that is, local level, state level, or even, global level. And really where those projects come from is our local community members. So some examples of some things that we've already been doing with our community. We've been at the Broken Arrow Community Playhouse, helping them reorganize their storage and their prop rooms, and helping them to figure out methods of more consistently keeping track of the materials that they have coming in and out of their campus. We are working with a nonprofit organization out of Jinx that's called Rising Village that takes migrant women primarily from Afghanistan and teaches them how to sew as a marketable skill so that they can then go out and make profit and support their families. We're working directly with the Tulsa Day Center, which is a homelessness center, trying to help them to figure out a way that they could have contraband storage that doesn't break any kind of laws and allows their users to be able to come onto their site without bringing contraband into the building. And so just all kinds of problems from everywhere. And that really comes up from about, after spring break to May is our partnership cafe unit. And our students will be reaching out to those type of nonprofits, local businesses, to see if there's anything that we can do to help them. And our 4 main focus areas are a product, a service, a system, or a space. So we can make a product, something like we 3D print a prototype, or we laser engrave something for you, or make something that actually solves a problem. We develop a system that would consistently allow you to solve those problems as they arise. We provide some kind of service for you that's something that we can do to help you out, or we redesign a space. So you have like an empty courtyard that you want to redesign, and we can make a 3D model of it, and we can brainstorm ideas for it, and we can come up with all kinds of solutions that go along with that. So that's where our students really get to get outside of our building. They get to travel around, do tours, talk to in-person, face-to-face meetings, or virtual Zoom meetings, or professional phone calls. And we really act as an engineering design firm. We refer to people as our clients. We make sure that we're treating our clients with dignity or respect and upholding all of the values that we would want for our firm to be reliable and consistent. And we provide real solutions for people to actually implement and actually do. So right now we're actually working with several of the Broken Arrow schools to collect holiday hope notes for the Arc of Oklahoma, which are just kind of booster notes for the holidays. Then the Arc of Oklahoma passes those out to their clientele, which is really great opportunity for us. And it's just something that we pick them up along the way. So any community members that are listening or watching and they want to reach out to us and see how they could help us or how we can help them, we'd be happy to have those communications.
Yeah.
Awesome.
In addition to that, like we need help not only for projects and working with partners, which is critical to our success as a school, but we have unique needs at Vanguard. And so like I'm not over jumping into dumpsters and pulling out materials. I've done that quite a few times.
Not above it?
I'm not above it. Yes, that's the right way to say that. But yeah, we are always looking for materials. We had construction next door for apartments, and I walked over there with Emily last year and talked to the supervisor, and we were like, hey, can we use your leftover lumber? And they're like, yeah. So we did that in a few trips and loaded up some trailers and store lumber. So, and I've talked to another supervisor at construction sites, and so we're always looking for materials that students can use, where they can fabricate. Like, so we work a lot with wood, cardboard. Was really cool with those 3D printers and the laser. We can rapidly prototype, which is a game changer. That's something that I learned a lot with, really with TU engineering students. Really at the beginning, I was doing several projects with them. We were lucky to have a working prototype by like March, and so they had been working months. But once we start bringing in this technology of like 3D printing and lasers, we were able to have like 17 different working prototypes by Christmas. And so it rapidly speeds up that process of students developing an idea and innovating something new whenever they have access to these materials and these tools that they can bring their ideas to life. And so that's something very different, where we need help getting resources so that we can create opportunities for these students so that they can bring these ideas to life and really develop them very quickly into something that's totally new.
And then I think the other way that the community can really help us is we're always in search of professionals in every field to come in and talk, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about what's going on in electrical engineering, talk to us about civil engineering, talk to us about, what the road work that's going on in front of our school right now. What does that entail? Because we have students from all walks of life that plan on going in all directions. And it's really great when we can have somebody on our campus that has that experience and that professional, attitude towards that can talk to them about it. So we've had guest speakers come in from OU. We've had guest speakers from 36 Degrees North, which is an entrepreneurship company. We've had guest speakers from several Native American organizations that have come in and talked at length. And so we always encourage anyone who wants to talk to high school students and have their voice heard and have, some people that can back them up. Feel free to come on our campus and let us know, because we love to have those conversations.
Yeah, I know my wife, Ashley Spencer, is an English teacher at Vanguard. She actually had JoJo Nichols come and speak to her class today because they're actually working on a play in their English class. I mean, that's just another example of one of the unique experiences that you can get. Before we wrap this up, tell me a little bit about, we touched on it a little bit early. The enrollment process is coming up pretty soon. Parents that are watching at home, a kid that's watching right now, what do they need to do if they're interested?
So Ms. Replogle will be coming around mid-January or the end of this semester, one of the two, and she'll be presenting that form, which is a Google form. They'll fill that out. That submits an application to us. We do have a limited amount of students that we can take on our campus. So our incoming freshman is 75, 50 in the Expo program.
And then you'll have your first senior class next year, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And 25 in our Broken Arrow Design Lab program. And again, the differences between those two, project-based learning is the Expo program and human-centered design is the Bad Lab program. Because they'll need to select that on the form. They will only get to interview for one or the other, and they won't really get a chance to kind of flip-flop in between. So they really should do some research on that and decide which of those two programs they really want to be a part of. And they can always reach out to us, and we'd be happy to. Most of the time what we'll do is we'll have students reach back out to them and talk to them about what their experiences are and about which programs they've been involved in and what they've seen from both programs. So once they fill out that form, that comes to us. We take those and we kind of filter them down to the ones that we want to bring in and interview based off of their responses on that form, based off of their, feedback from their schools and that sort of stuff. We'll bring them on campus during the school day from their sites, and we'll do an interview on campus with our coaches, our teachers on campus, to kind of evaluate them for that passion and that drive and that independent spirit. And something to kind of emphasize too is, like, we talk a lot about engineering because we do offer an engineering elective in both programs, but you don't have to know that you want to be an engineer to come to our campus. I have a cosmetologist student. I have a mechanics student. I've got somebody who's going to do fashion design, right? So you don't have to be an engineer or interested in engineering.
Yeah, it's just truly an alternative way of learning.
It really is about, is the traditional classroom not really the best place for you? Is that not really what you want to pursue? And do you want to make an impact in your community? Do you want to do something that's going to make a difference? And do you want to see that unique approach? That's really what we're looking for.
Mr. Perry, you got any final questions or thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm just proud to be associated with great teachers like this. It makes me realize the impact that we're having not only on these students, but also providing a workforce and the career fields that these students will be able to go into is exciting to think about. And I just appreciate what you all do every day to help our students. And again, doing school in a different way. I think it's going to change us all across the school district, not just Vanguard.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you joining us on today's episode of Core Values, the All Things Broken Arrow Schools podcast. We will see you next time.